Hey guys, it's Emma Vigling with TYT Politics. Hope everyone's having a good day. So, as you may have heard, Richard Cordray, the head of the CFPB, resigned. He sent a letter to President Trump on Friday announcing his resignation officially. A few hours later, President Trump, named Mick Mulvaney, the director of the Office of Management and Budget and Corporate Tool and General Tool, to the head of the CFPB. He can't do that, and I'll get into that a little bit later. But Cordray, he plans to run for governor of Ohio, which seems to be the reason behind his abrupt departure from the CFPB. He leaves the CFPB in almost complete disarray. I think that, I know people have their own political ambitions, and from what I've heard, he had always planned to run for governor of Ohio and was going to leave the CFPB. But the CFPB is one of the few government institutions that came out of the Dodd-Frank Act, or the few parts of the Dodd-Frank Act that work for people. Dodd-Frank is watered down, it didn't do enough, but the CFPB was a really good thing to come out of that, and it's returned over, I think, $11 billion to over 25 million American consumers. So it's done good work, and Richard Cordray leaving is not good news because Trump has long said he wants to dismantle it. And now that he's remembered to dismantle it because it's in the news, it's more likely that he will do so. The CFPB was the brainchild of Senator Elizabeth Warren. She'd been tinkering with it since she was a professor at Harvard back before she was a senator. So I think that she's been vocal about it on purpose. Obviously, this is near and dear to her heart, and we need more consumer protection. Trump, clearly, he wanted to drain the swamp, but doesn't really care when the swamp preys upon the consumers. So I hope everyone that voted for him is really pleased with themselves. The New York Times reports that actually today, Mick Mulvaney showed up at the CFPB even though he is not the director, and I will explain that in a second. The bureaucratic roller coaster began with the abrupt departure on Friday of Richard Cordray, who helped the agency aggressively expand its powers to punish rule-breaking companies. He named Leanna English as the acting deputy director and presumed acting director. The White House responded forcefully by saying Mr. Mulvaney would be the one in control until the president decided on a permanent successor, whose confirmation could take months. And on Sunday evening, Miss English, the acting head, filed a lawsuit against President Trump in an attempt to block him from appointing Mr. Mulvaney, who was named in the lawsuit as claiming to be acting director of the agency. As confusion reigned, Miss English headed to Capitol Hill to meet with lawmakers about her plans, including Senator Elizabeth Warren. Mr. Mulvaney, for his part, dodged questions from consumer finance advocates as he carried in breakfast for at least a few employees on the 1,600-person payroll. There was no public trace of Miss English, whose tenure as a low-profile public servant abruptly ended as she began to fight on behalf of the agency she helped found in 2011. Mr. Mulvaney has been openly critical of the agency, once calling it a joke and a wonderful example of how bureaucracy will function if it has no accountability to anyone. While serving in Congress as a representative from South Carolina, Mick Mulvaney voted to kill the CFPB, so this is in the tradition of Donald Trump appointing people to the head of agencies that have in the past openly advocated getting rid of them altogether, because he's not in the business of governing, he's in the business of tearing apart government, and that's what the Republican Party has become. But the Dodd-Frank Act made it clear that what Trump is doing with putting Mick Mulvaney as the head of the CFPB temporarily it's just not in the Dodd-Frank Act. It's not what you're supposed to be doing. If there is a CFPB vacancy, the deputy director becomes acting director. That's what it stipulates in Dodd-Frank. Trump can nominate the next CFPB director, and obviously he will, but that nominee must be confirmed by the Senate before they can be put through. In the meanwhile, the acting director is supposed to be at the head of the CFPB. That's why English's lawsuit has a lot of merit, and it may take forever, and that's why that's probably what the Trump administration is banking on, that the litigation will take so long that they can just get away with crapping all over our government institutions and our laws. But yes, until the Senate confirms Trump's nominee, Leanna English is supposed to be the head of the CFPB. Trump doesn't care. He's going to strong arm his way into these government institutions and does not care what the text says. He doesn't even know how separation of powers works. He's by far the most ignorant president to ever exist. I mean, I don't think there's any question about that. He doesn't care what the Constitution says, what these laws say. He's just going to strong arm because he has dictatorial tendencies. And this is an example of that. Not caring what Dodd-Frank says at all, and not waiting for the Senate to confirm someone. So you have, in kind of this almost mob boss fashion, Mick Mulvaney coming in, bringing breakfast to people, trying to be nice to them, butter them up, while he completely screws them over. I'm sure they want to work with Leanna English, the woman who helped found the CFPB and is their longtime co-worker and probably friend. But Trump doesn't care about that. He doesn't care about the rule of law or making that government institution work. It's all about exerting his power, the rule of law be damned.